Is the Philadelphia Eagles defense about to pull off the most insane heist in NFL history? Or are we witnessing a total front office disaster in the making? Forget the whispers. The rumors are hitting a fever pitch, and the latest talk about Max Crosby potentially heading to Philly is sending shockwaves through the league. But before we get into why this massive move might actually be a trap, you need to know the truth behind the absolute madness that's been consuming the locker room lately. Before we dive in, smash that subscribe button if you want the fastest NFL updates on the planet. Let's be real for a second. Everyone has been obsessing over this bizarre conspiracy theory involving A.J. Brown, Haason Reddick, and a wild locker room drama that sounds more like a soap opera than professional football. Ever since Brown was shipped off to the New England Patriots, the internet has been on fire with claims that his falling out with the team stemmed from a messy, personal conflict involving Reddick and a private matter that supposedly spilled into the professional sphere. It's the kind of story that usually stays in the shadows, but it has dominated the conversation for weeks. People are pointing fingers, making wild guesses, and trying to connect dots that probably don't even exist. But here is the burning question. Who is actually to blame for this team's sudden and dramatic identity shift? Is it the locker room culture, or is this just standard, high-stakes NFL chaos? Drop a name in the comments below. I want to see who you think is really at fault here. Now look, Haason Reddick's run from 2020 to 2023 was nothing short of a masterclass in edge rushing. We're talking about a guy who turned himself into a defensive nightmare. During that legendary 2022 season, when the Birds were tearing through the NFC, he was nearly unstoppable. 16 sacks, double-digit quarterback hits, and forced fumbles everywhere you looked. He was the prototype for what you want in a modern defensive weapon. I remember watching him back in his days at Temple. He was a late bloomer, a guy who didn't necessarily look like a world beater on day one. But he had that explosive, twitchy athleticism that you just cannot teach. When he finally found his groove, he didn't just play, he dominated. Yet, even with all that production, the situation in Philly eventually soured. Howie Roseman, known for being a shark at the negotiating table, eventually decided he wasn't going to get into a long-term salary battle, and that paved the way for the trade to the Jets, a move that eventually spiraled into the trade demands we saw recently. But let's get back to the elephant in the room. This wild, persistent conspiracy theory about A.J. Brown and that alleged locker room. It's been painted as a story of fractured relationships, secret tensions, and personal betrayals. It sounds like something out of a movie, but is there any shred of truth to it? The word from inside the building is a definitive no. Recent reports have confirmed that key figures in the organization are slamming the door shut on these rumors. They are calling this narrative pure nonsense, a complete fabrication that has no basis in reality. The message is loud and clear. This supposed drama is just noise designed to distract from the real issues. And trust me, the real issues are far more interesting than some tabloid rumor. If you're wondering why A.J. Brown was truly unhappy, you have to look at the football. This wasn't about drama. It was about the field. Reports indicate that a significant portion of Brown's frustration came down to simple, cold, hard production expectations. He felt like the connection with Jalen Hurts wasn't hitting the marks it needed to reach, especially when it came to attacking specific defensive coverages. Brown wanted to be the primary target on those tight, high-leverage windows against zone coverage, and he felt the trigger wasn't being pulled often enough. It's a tough pill for some fans to swallow because Hurts has been the face of this franchise. We've seen the magic. We've seen the deep ball success. We've seen the chemistry that turned Brown into an all-pro caliber receiver. But when the wins stop coming the way they used to, and the offense hits a rut, everything, even the relationship between a superstar receiver and his quarterback, comes under a microscope. Brown's departure to New England is a massive change. Seeing him walk through those doors and into a new jersey is a reminder that in the NFL, nothing lasts forever. But wait until you hear the latest on the Max Crosby situation, because that is where the real off-season fireworks are hidden. Could Howie Roseman actually go out and make a move that rivals the Los Angeles Rams? When the Rams went out and secured Myles Garrett, the entire league stood up and took notice. It was a statement move. It told the world that the Rams are playing by a different set of rules.
It's caught the 30 by
Immediate reaction of
Devontae
Philadelphia
Smith.
It really dictates what the defense dictates.
Who is Roseman going to grab to counter this? Enter Max Crosby. The name has been swirling for months. After that failed trade attempt by Baltimore earlier this year, which fell through due to concerns over his physical status, the idea of Crosby landing in a high-profile defense has become the ultimate what-if scenario. Think about it. The Eagles and the Rams have been locked in a Cold War of sorts. They are the two heavyweights of the NFC, constantly trading, signing, and drafting to keep their title windows open. The Rams load up on defense. The Eagles answer with a strategic maneuver. It is an arms race of the highest order. And with these two teams scheduled to collide again in October, the intensity is only going to ramp up. Now, let's talk logistics, because this is where the viral hype meets the harsh reality of the salary cap. Does a trade for Max Crosby actually make sense for the Eagles? On paper, it sounds incredible. You put Crosby opposite a high-level edge rusher, and suddenly, you have the scariest pass rush in the league. You have a guy who plays with that relentless, blue-collar motor that defines Philadelphia football. He has the grit, the swagger, and the aura of a guy who was born to wear a Philadelphia jersey. However, the cost would be astronomical. We aren't just talking about draft picks. You're talking about potentially parting ways with young, developing studs like Nolan Smith or pieces of the defensive core. The Eagles have already committed massive money to Jonathan Greenard and have big contracts looming for stars like Jalen Carter and Quinyon Mitchell. Is the organization willing to blow up their cap flexibility for a move that, while flashy, might be redundant given the depth they are already cultivating? The reality is that Roseman is playing a long game. He's always looking for that extra edge, that needle mover, but he's also a master of the cap. He knows that building a dynasty isn't about one massive trade. It's about having a sustainable roster that can compete year in and year out. While the idea of a Crosby-led defense is a fan's dream, the math is a total nightmare. But let's not pretend it's impossible. We've seen this front office do the unthinkable before. If they truly believe that a move for a player of Crosby's caliber is the missing piece to get them over the hump and back into the Super Bowl, they will find a way to make the numbers work. They have the draft capital, thanks to that flexibility they've maintained, and they have the motivation to keep pace with the Rams' defensive retooling. The bottom line is this: the NFL is evolving. The teams that win are the ones that take calculated risks, and the ones that don't get left behind. Whether or not Max Crosby actually makes his way to Philadelphia, one thing is certain. The front office is going to keep us all guessing until the very last second. So, where does this leave the team? We have a new era beginning in the receiver room. We have a defensive identity that is constantly shifting, and we have a front office that is never satisfied with the status quo. It's going to be a wild season, and if you think the drama is over, you aren't paying attention. The moves being made right now are going to dictate the outcome of the 2026 season. We've covered the rumors, the conspiracies, and the high-stakes trade talk that has everyone in the league on edge. But don't blink, because the next development in this saga could drop at any moment. Are you ready for what's coming next? Because the speed at which this team is moving is only going to increase from here. What do you think is the biggest risk the Eagles are taking right now? Is it the shift in offensive personnel, or is it the gamble on the defensive front? I want to hear your take on the state of this team. The landscape of the NFC is changing, and Philly is right in the middle of the storm. Keep your eyes on the news, keep the debates going, and stay tuned, because we're going to be tracking every single update, every whisper, and every trade rumor as it develops. The road to the championship is long, and this is just the beginning of the journey. Thanks for hanging out for this breakdown. If you enjoyed this look behind the curtain, make sure you hit that button, keep the notifications on, and let's keep this community growing. We're going to be here every step of the way to break it all down. No fluff, no filler, just the raw reality of what's happening with your team. I'll catch you on the next one.